supervisorial meetings. So that's a little bit about what the job of the county supervisor does. This particular district has the largest amount of unincorporated residents. So if you live in Big Bear City, I am your representative. So you could go to the city council in Big Bear Lake, but they don't represent you. And so whether it's Lucerne Valley, Landers, Wonder Valley, Joshua Tree, Morongo Valley, Mentone down below, there are a lot of pockets of our unincorporated communities that don't have a city council. And so your supervisor is that representative for you for any of your needs. And one of the best parts about our job is we are able to partner with our nonprofits. And we have several of them here tonight that I've been able to work with. So I wanted to touch lightly. We have something that's near and dear to my heart are all of our veteran causes. My late husband served in the Marine Corps, and I was able to partner with the American Legion. We have, I'm gonna read it so I don't goof up the name, but we have the American Patriot Music Project with Tony, who's here with us tonight, who has a program where he teaches vets how to build guitars, play guitars, and it's therapy through creating and doing those. And so we've been able to fund part of that project. And then we also have a ranch out here for equestrian efforts for our veterans. And so that Welcome Home Ranch that is not very far from here, we were able to buy hay for the horses so that the vets go out there, they interface sort of that equine therapy, and it helps a lot of our vets that have served with different issues that they have. And it's just an opportunity for them to connect in a way that is therapeutic for them as well as the horses. And so that's an example of the nonprofit side in what we touch on and interface with at the county. We've done it with the Homeless Coalition and a number of different entities. And I just wanna, if you're a veteran in this room, will you please raise your hand? Thank you all for your service. It's been an honor to get to know the American Legion and to work with you and those that you serve, so thank you for that privilege. Some of the things that we are working on in the law enforcement side. So our Sheriff's Department, we have our captain here with us tonight. Thank you for joining us. Sheriff Dykes, the sheriff of the entire county, has prioritized unincorporated law enforcement. We've been able to fund 2 additional deputies here on the mountain. And we have an operation going called Operation Consequence. And I think that if you are on the sheriff's email list, you probably know a little bit about it. I will read some of the statistics of the great things that that department is doing. So from October 1st of last year through September 15th of this year, these are the statistics for that. It is 899 arrests, 713 search warrants. They have seized 1,184 firearms, 224 ghost guns. The narcotic seizures, there's been over 13,000 pounds of cocaine that has been seized, almost 2,000 pounds of methamphetamines, 22 pounds of heroin, 191 pounds of fentanyl, and if anybody's familiar, that's a lot of fentanyl because they are little tablets. Over 3,000 traffic stops, and almost 1,000 traffic citations. And so our Sheriff's Department has really done a tremendous job of trying to serve our unincorporated, as well as our cities that contract for services, with teaching the bad guys that there are consequences to your actions in a state that sometimes otherwise doesn't like to have consequences. And so that is something that we are very proud of. In addition to that, we have Laura's Law, which is something that is new and unique to our county. So our Sheriff's Department has tools that they work with adults and aging services, behavioral health. How do we help homeless people that have decided, or for either reasons of their choosing or otherwise, they are on the streets? And so oftentimes we will have families come to us and say, my son or my daughter is out on the street, they're schizophrenic, they have mental health issues, we can't talk them into seeking treatment, can you help us? And prior to Laura's Law, we did not have the ability, the Sheriff's Department didn't have the ability to really take people off through a conservatorship in the courts and put them into a rehabilitative setting. So Laura's Law was passed unanimously by the Board of Supervisors, and it enables the Sheriff's Department to assess those chronically ill that most oftentimes have what we call a dual diagnosis. So it could either be addiction and or mental health, and usually they go hand in hand. And then the sheriff's department makes a case to the courts that that person would be better served in a treatment facility, and the courts will then, if they rule on it and find that that is the case, then the sheriff's department has the ability to put that person in a program and to seek treatment. And so we have been outreached by many of the families that have asked us to help their loved ones that, for whatever the reason, can't seek the treatment on their own. And so it's called Laura's Law. And so that was just granted as a tool for the sheriff's department to use for us to help our chronic homeless in many instances. Not all counties have it, but San Bernardino now does. So our Public Works, we have a tool in the unincorporated area called See-Click Fix. It's an application you can download onto your phone. I have flyers at the back table. This is what it looks like if you picked it up. Oftentimes I will get phone calls that say, there are potholes on my road, how do I find out? I've reported the pothole, it seems to be growing in size, it's not getting fixed, or I have drainage damage. There are a variety of different issues. It could be illegal dumping, traffic signal out, stop sign down, roadside missing. The neighbors have junk that's accumulating, and there's all kinds of issues. This application allows you to report it. I promise you it goes someplace. If after a while you don't see results, feel free to contact my office. Sometimes it could be that it is an administrative citation that has to work its way through the courts. That is often the times when we have hoarding situations. We can't go in, we can't clean up properties, and I tell people, I don't want the government coming onto my property telling me what I can and can't do. I just don't. But at times when it interferes with our neighbors and it bleeds over into our neighbors' quality of life, then you have that intersection of government and private property rights. And that's when the government steps in and will issue a notice of violation, and then it will proceed through an administrative hearing that eventually ends up in the courts if that resident doesn't correct the notice of violation. So this app is the first place that you have to go to report it, and they need that information for the court hearings and the court cases. So please make sure that you grab one of those on the way out. And like I said, it's for a variety of different issues. Vacation rentals, a hot topic on all sides. So I hear equally as many people say they are wonderful for our community. They give visitors a place to stay that is unique and different. They allow visitors from outside the area to come and enjoy in a non-hotel type setting. And if it's done right, they provide benefits to the communities. And then I have equally as many passionate people that can't stand them, want them gone. It's taken away the feel of the neighborhood, too many cars parked, people that are loud and noisy and don't respect our neighborhoods. And that is, it was an untenable situation. We created an ordinance. We didn't get it right the first time. We tweaked it and we adjusted it. And so now we have an outside management company that responds to our calls for service within code enforcement. There is a hotline. There is another flyer out in the back. So this flyer out back, grab it. There is a phone number that you can call 24/7 to report the bad actors. In a perfect world at the county, you shouldn't ever know that you have a vacation rental next to you. We don't live in a perfect world, so the county is still trying to get it right. And I do appreciate those that are come up and they do it properly. They have property where the host shows up, they take an interest, they manage their property on a daily basis or a weekly basis, they respond timely. And then we have the out of area property managers that don't necessarily respond timely. We are working very hard at the county to try to correct that. One of the things that we have done is that we've asked for a study to be conducted. Should there be a moratorium and a cap? And if the answer to that is yes, which we're gonna find out in December, if the answer to that is yes, how do you do it? Do you do it by zip code? Do you do it by census tract? Do you do it by street census? I mean, if you're in Sugarloaf, do you say it's 2 per block? And how do you regulate that if you already have a number on the block? Do you force people to then go into a lottery system? Do you have so many per quarter mile, half mile, 1 mile? If the property sizes are very, very small lots, should it be fewer in communities than if you live on a 10-acre parcel in Joshua Tree? So the problem with San Bernardino County that's different from other jurisdictions that have faced the same challenge, I'll use Palm Springs for example. Palm Springs is its own city, its lots are pretty much the same size, and it's a one size fits all. If I'm going to, as a board of supervisors, try to regulate the industry, and we say no more than 2 per person, is that 2 per area? So does that mean I can have 1 in Lake Arrowhead and 1 in Joshua Tree, but I can't have 1 in Big Bear City? So the rules that have been created in other areas that work really well don't necessarily fit us because we're so big. So we are trying to figure out a balance for that and how we keep our neighborhoods residential and not commercial. While we still allow people to have their private property rights to do on their properties that which they want to do. A lot of people have been benefited by the industry, whether that's cleaning, property management, of that industry. And so we recognize that there are pros and cons to both sides. My office, we will take any and all recommendations and suggestions. We have a number of folks that call us regularly that provide positive input, negative input. We'll take it all, because that's how we really try to learn how we need to regulate this. So if you have any of that input, stay tuned. We'll continue to take it, and then in December we will have a meeting where all the different public meetings that our Land Use Services Department has had, they will reveal what their suggestion is on how we should regulate that industry. So stay tuned for that. The county will be pushing out notices to attend that meeting, and you can also stream it to hear what the recommendations are. Our Land Use Services Department is going through a rehabilitation. So land use has probably been the most impactful department to my office. So at 10,000 square miles, when I deal with mountains and deserts, everybody has a land use issue. It could be a permit, it could be code enforcement, it could be illegal cannabis, could be vacation rentals, all those fall within the umbrella of land use services. And our previous land use services director is no more. We have hired a new land use services director. His name is Mark Wardlaw. He is tremendous. He comes to all of our meetings. If you have come to a board of supervisors meeting and you have a suggestion, a complaint, a thought, he will pull you aside after that meeting. He will meet with you individually. He will hear you out, and great changes are happening because we have new leadership there. So that is a department that has really plagued us and been an awful lot of frustration for our mountain desert region folks. That it's probably the #1 complaint that we've had in our office. And so it's not just the 3rd district that's had the issues, all the other supervisorial districts have too. And so under Mark's leadership, we are optimistic that he has changed the direction and the course of that for the positive. So I'm open to any and all suggestions that you have. If you've had a bad experience, give us a second shot. And we stand ready to interface with you if you can't get the answers that you need in a timely manner, or if it's just because we're the county and we're big and it's hard to navigate, call us and we'll help you work through how to get to where you need to go. One of the questions that I often get is, when will Highway 38 reopen? So in my job at the county, we deal, and this valley is hard because we are surrounded by state and federal entities. We have very little county land that we touch, county jurisdiction. I'll give you the example, Stanfield Roundabout that we're working on. So the city of Big Bear Lake came to me 4 years ago and said, could I please help with the offset intersection right there at Stanfield? And there wasn't a stop sign at the time. Like if you were going down to Fawnskin, that stop sign didn't exist. They put in the stop sign, it's offset, it's awkward. Oh, there's a boat trailer going to the launch ramp. Can't quite see it. The elementary school is there, the animal shelter. So what we decided to do was a roundabout. If you hate them, I'm sorry. We feel that it's like the best thing to do, because if you put a light in, everybody going off the mountain at the end of a ski day, you need the light to stay green. If you're launching a boat in the summertime, you need it to stay green. So signals don't work that way, roundabouts are better for that. The offset intersection, it included the school district, it included the Forest Service, it included Caltrans, it included Southern California Edison, it included the city of Big Bear Lake that wanted the intersection, the county and the Forest Service. There might be another agency or two in there, but that has probably been the most complex project because of all the different entities, and the county just operates the asphalt, so to speak. So we work with all of those on a regular basis. Some of those agencies are easier to get to respond to phone calls and emails than others. Jim Miller and I beat our head against the walls on some of those agencies that will remain nameless, and they aren't in the room tonight. So Caltrans, Highway 38 has done a tremendous job of trying to get that reopened for us before the winter months. They're telling us the end of the year on that highway. The county has no say in it and no jurisdiction over it other than to get an update and to advocate for a third way off the mountain. So we understand whether it's hospital need or a fire or any type of evacuation, our residents have to be able to get off the mountain. So one of my jobs is to advocate for your right to come on and off in a safe manner. And Caltrans is, to their credit, working as quickly as they can to get that back up and running. So they're telling us the end of the year. I'm hopeful it's before Thanksgiving, but no promises on that. Winter preparedness. So one of the things, and I talked about this at a lunch meeting today, when we issue evacuation warnings and orders, it's super frustrating because mountain residents, no matter where they are, Forest Falls, Angeles, Oaks, Crestline, community up here, folks don't like to leave. I don't like to leave. We have animals, we have responsibilities, we have work to go to. Makes it very difficult for our first responders. And oftentimes we get things, when we're talking about storms, we get the weather predictions. We know stuff is coming. We just don't know exactly where it will hit and how hard. So as it gets closer, those are refined. Sometimes it's too late to leave. So we had the example of Hurricane Hillary. It was lighter up here. Seven Oaks, one of my communities that I represent, we still have a missing person, and we have a number of homes that are washed away and gone. We have roads that are washed away. We have people that have not been able to get in, to get to their personal vehicles, or to get to their homes to retrieve their personal belongings, because it absolutely wiped out that community. So I'm not sure that those stories are being told across the mountaintop, but those are the kind of things that when that sheriff's department issues that evacuation warning, it should be your first clue that they're not crying wolf, that there is something coming, that they've been notified. And then when it's an order, which is different than the warning, I gotta tell you, it's time to go. And it's an inconvenience, and I know it's a pain, but really, to keep yourself, your family members, and those safe. We do all that we can to assist in those instances, but it puts their lives at risk too for people that will sometimes remain behind. So please keep that in mind. The state partners that we have, Senator Ochoa Bogue and Assemblymember Lackey, have asked us at the county how they could help partner with us to help facilitate things for the next winter blizzard that we may get. And our answer was, we have plows, we didn't have giant front end loaders, we needed some equipment to go onto the loaders, and we needed some more snowcats. And so both of them prioritized funding, and they were able to get us funding for additional heavy equipment for the mountaintop. And so your community will be the recipient and the benefit of that, thanks to those two offices. So let's see, they bring you snowcats, skid steers, snow blowers. That was something that we realized down in Crestline and Lake Arrowhead, that you can plow, but you're plowing everybody in. You can scoop and dump, but we didn't get the dump trucks up in time, and even if you could, we couldn't maneuver around. So snow blowers really became the means to have it appropriately moved out of the way. Skid Pros are an effective way of clearing snow, so they have funded some of those. And I will tell you something that I learned in the last storm that I think is important for us to know, and I think the city of Big Bear Lake, do we have anybody from the city here? Sean, when you define a passable road, our definition at County Public Works is one car, one lane.
Generally, we would defer to the fire department, and I think they would, that's a start, but I think generally we try to get to about a lane and a half.
Okay. So when our residents see that, oh, the road is passable, I myself happened to have been in the Valley of Enchantment. Claire was in a vehicle in front of me, in a sheriff's vehicle, I was in a prior vehicle, we were going down a hill. Passable meant pull the mirrors in, because the mirrors are scraping. So we did that, 2 vehicles going down, little icy. There is then a utility truck coming up. That was a passable road. Somebody had to back up or back down, and there's no driveways to back into. So when we talk about passable roads, I think it's incumbent upon us in government, at least for the county, to define what that is, so you have an expectation. So when you see on a county public works side that the road is passable, please know that that is our definition, even if it's not necessarily a legitimate definition. So keep that in mind. And lastly, one of the things that I hear about in Big Bear City area is the trash. Folks, they have concerns about where trash goes, how often it goes, and the need for the residents or visitors not to illegally dump, to have a place to put their cheap sleds that break, that they just leave on the side of the road, or to not inundate the city of Big Bear Lake in their Clean Bear sites. So the city of Big Bear Lake took action to make theirs more appropriate. And so now the rest of the valley is struggling with how do we dispose of rubbish, both by our visitors as well as our residents in some instances. And so I'm exploring an opportunity with the Community Services District to see if we can partner. I believe that I can find funding for a 2-year pilot project to create our own Clean Bear site here in the East Valley. I cannot speak on behalf of the CSD, their board members, or the management there, but we are working hand in hand. If I can fund it, then maybe they can operate it, and that's really what we're hopeful for in that perfect world. So please know that we're having those discussions. Those board members want to figure out how to do it for everybody's benefit. There are lots of logistical things that we're trying to work through, but please know that we understand it is a need, and I found the funding. We just have to figure out the logistics and the mechanics. So stay tuned for that. And that's really my update from the county. I'd like to hear from you, answer questions. If you have comments, complaints, anything, would be willing to entertain any and all of it.
So we already have some, so if you have any cards for
Sure.
letters, raise them up, and I'll collect them.
Oh, yeah.
She knows how to read.
So we'll go on with you wanna read the first one?
Yep. So our first one, what else can be done to help our veterans in Big Bear?
So we have, the county has an Office of Veterans Affairs. We are in the process of hiring a new director for that. We have a candidate. I received an email today. The candidate for that job, it would be presumptuous of me to speak on exactly who he is, his background. But safe to say, it could be an infantry, could be some years of service, combat veteran. So I'm hopeful that that candidacy works out to turn into full-time employment. When that comes, we will make that announcement. Our Office of Veterans Affairs at the county partners with our nonprofits. They partner with other Veterans Affairs, both federal as well as state, in trying to help our veterans. We can bring resource fairs up here too. And so looking forward to having that new hire hopefully announced soon. And then we can do even more. My office can partner with nonprofits. And as I mentioned before, my late husband served in the Marine Corps for 18 years. He was killed on his second deployment in Iraq. And so I have a soft spot for anybody who serves. So the families that support those that are on active duty, both present and past. So they are the ones that have risked their lives for us, and I think that we have a debt that we owe to them. So anything that we can do, my office and I stand prepared and willing to do that. So whether it's the American Legion or the VFW or anybody else.
Thank you.
So let us know the great things that you know of that are going on in the community and support. And if you go on the website for the County Veterans Affairs Department, they do really cool stuff that a lot of people don't know about, like the veteran ID card that tools and needles came up to us, like, look what I got from your resource fair, so that was
Right.
pretty cool. So road issue, the 1.5 mile of road east of Shore on Big Bear Boulevard needs to be resurfaced. This is the road to the intersection at Green Spot, on up 38 to at least Montclair. I think this might be Caltrans, right? Is that the, yeah. Do you wanna kind of speak on the difference?
So if there is a state highway to include Big Bear Boulevard, Big Bear Lake Boulevard, even though it goes either through the city or through the county, and even though we respectfully request, sometimes we yell, sometimes we passionately beg Caltrans, it's within the state's jurisdiction. And I know that Mountain Area Transit, MARTA, has been an advocate, the city has been an advocate, the county has been an advocate. So pretty much what I would say is that if there's a stretch that really needs to be redone on the state highway, whether if it's in the county, I mean, we know about it, I drive these roads, I'm dodging potholes on oncoming traffic too. So we all know about it, but stuff happens, rains happen where I might not know. One of the projects that I have, it's an $8 million project in the unincorporated area that we're doing to divert flows so that they basically bypass that highway so it stops the erosion and the undermining of the state highway so that they don't have to keep fixing it. So that was my contribution, a little bit of what I can do to prevent it, but we need to get the Caltrans to fix those things.
But we'll hang on to this one and send it to our state
Yep.
partners. This is regarding guns. Do you believe we should have the same weapons the government has as our founders believed so we can protect ourselves from the government?
So, I'm a Second Amendment person. I know that there is controversy in this state and in our government. I don't make the laws at that federal level or the state level. I have no desire to serve at the state or the federal level, but I believe that you should have the right to bear arms to protect yourself. But when we live in a state like California, you have to follow the laws here. So I am not advocating for breaking those laws, even though sometimes they may frustrate me. Our captain can speak more to what is and maybe isn't allowed legally, but that's not necessarily his jurisdiction either.
The next one is regarding sanitation. I might need a little bit help from the author on this one. Why do we have
I can explain.
5 robotic? Is that what it's called?
Mine, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's about the 53B sanitation special districts run out of Victorville or from the dam all the way to the division of North Shore.
Okay.
It's a special district sanitation.
Phone scheme.
Everybody over
CSA
there.
7053B.
Okay, thank you, Glenn.
So everybody on that end over there from the dam to division on the north side, during that group, it's a finite group. We pay a lot more than the rest of the valley. Our money goes down to Victorville. And the administration down there, the texts are up here.
Everybody's got the same damn problem.
My question is, the answer is.
Can't hear.
I
can't hear
Us
either.
to meet Barbara.
I wonder what the
This
microphones are
Victor sewer
for.
already comes here.
So here's the answer that nobody likes.
Could you repeat the question?
So the answer is, why are his fees in the special district that serves him higher than comparable areas elsewhere?
Just a minute, no, it's not just that, it's why do we have a redundant system when we have a system here? Why can't we just be part of it? Why do we have to have another whole hierarchy down there?
So there's two answers to that same question. Fees are higher in certain areas because we have fewer connections.
You wanna borrow my hearing aid?
If we had
Sure.
it's more people that pay into the system that defrays the cost. The cost is a fixed capital cost. There are some operating and maintenance for individual connections, but for the most part, if there were 1,000 other homes that tied into that system, your rates would drop. Special districts within the state of California are created with a specific boundary that I wish I could change, but that is not my lane or my jurisdiction. You could petition to have the boundaries of the district changed.
That's not something I could request you guys to do?
No,
I mean,
So-
it's a little old guy up in North Shore, who's gonna listen?
I know. So one of the examples that I'll give are like where I spent 20 years in the Morongo Basin, we have 5 different water districts. And it's a duplication of services. Why don't we have one water district with 5 board members and 1 general manager? They spend $1 million in salaries that are duplicated. Why do they do that?
Exactly, that's my question.
They do that for a variety of reasons. So the board that manages it doesn't want to be disbanded. The general manager that manages it wants to keep his job. They want local control over it, so there are a variety of reasons. At a very complicated level, there is the local agency formation commission that we call LAVCO. Anybody in the room has worked with LAVCO? You can petition to LAVCO to become a part of a different jurisdiction, but it's a vote of the people that you would be joining and a vote of the people that you would be leaving, and it has to go through a state process that would redraw the boundaries of the district. So that's not something that's within the purview of your county.
And it comes back to
So,
us.
It's not my purview either.
Yeah, I know.
So I guess we're stuck.
Well, so when housing developments come in, and I'm not here to say whether they're good or bad, but if you had neighborhoods that built out in certain areas, your connection fees and your service fees would be reduced. There would be, because the capital expense is the capital expense, to operate the system. The more people that you have paying in to pay that down, then the more it reduces your
It just
fees.
seems like it's obvious that why would you have two administrators, we're paying for a whole administration building, people down there from what I already have them here. It's just common sense,
There is a process that you could go to petition that.
I guess.
Yep.
Alright, next one, in 2021, you secured 10 million for Big Bear, Joshua Tree for additional code enforcement and visitor trash and traffic mitigation. I believe it has a 2-year fund, it is being renewed, is it being renewed in the budget? If not, how does Big Bear begin to,
Receive our transit
receive our
occupancy tax.
actual, yeah, TOT?
So transit occupancy tax, when you stay in a hotel or when you stay in an Airbnb and you check out of the hotel, so if you check into a hotel and it's $69, which probably hasn't happened for 20 years. So when you check into a hotel for $69 and you think, oh, that's great, you check out and it's $105, it's the difference between the $69 and $105. It's could be a local tourism tax that's added on, but one of those lines will say transient occupancy tax. And that is paid to the jurisdiction where you're staying. So in Big Bear Lake, it will go to the city. In the county, it comes to the county. We abbreviate it and we call it TOT. Short-term vacation rentals also pay that tax at the county. It goes into the county's general fund. So what we do, and this is up for debate whether this is appropriate or inappropriate, but it goes into our general fund. And then it's left up to the supervisors to advocate for how they want that discretionary TOT funding spent. I prioritized the funding in the valley where we had trash issues, we had a number of them that you just heard her read. In the desert areas, we had illegal cannabis. What we did was, it's not all TOT funding, but what we did was, I said, we have a need. Our sheriff's department needed a marijuana enforcement task force, stood up. We pulled from our county general fund and we were able to solve that problem of our rural residents immediately and have resolve for them because we had flexibility, because the money was not earmarked for something very specific. So when we needed it for snow play, when we needed it for traffic control up here, when we needed it for extra deputies, we pull it from our county general fund. And so that is the way that your transient occupancy tax is managed. You have a voice to me to say, this is something new and different that's happening. We need this, we need it now, we need to secure additional resources, and that's where we pull the money from. So we know what comes in, and oftentimes our transient occupancy tax isn't enough to cover the impacts that happen from our tourists that visit. So that's subsidized by other general fund money that comes out of the general fund to help our residents in the rural areas.
Is that being renewed, or was that the one?
It's renewed,
Okay.
yes.
Why does it cost as much for one room to be rented out in a short-term rental as the whole house?
So we don't set the rates. If the question is the rental rate or the permit,
The permit?
could be the permit. So our permits are done, when you go into anything land use services and you're pulling a permit, we do a cost recovery. So the fee that you pay, like it or not, regardless of how expensive it is, we adjust our fees every 3 years unless they are super underfunded. Short-term vacation rentals was one of those. So what happened was, we had a new industry that popped up in vacation rentals, trying to figure out what is the cost to the county. You don't really recognize the full cost until you've had the industry for a while. Somebody will come up and say, hey, I responded to this, hey, I went to that. Hey, I didn't know that these bistro lights that are left on at midnight and I'm getting calls for services should be really the code enforcement that responds to. So we have restructured our calls for service. They did a study, they figured out how much it costs to manage an application for a short-term vacation rental. They divided that up and they figured out the cost for that permit, whether it's one room or a 12-bedroom house. That is the cost for the inspector to go out, conduct it, to do the inspection. It's their time on the road, it's the paperwork involved. So whether it's one room or 12 rooms, it is the process that costs it. So that's why it's not on a sliding scale.
Okay, so the rest are a little long, so bear with me. I own a cabin in Sugarloaf that we bought to use personally and rent when not up in the mountain. One of the issues I have is with the permit fee for short-term rentals. Hawaii, for example, has a one-time fee of $500 for getting a permit in the resort zone area. After that, there are no renewal fees. Hawaii is a high demand area year-round. Big Bear is not, and 2023 has been super low demand as visitors look elsewhere to vacation. Why the high permit fee, $1,400 and renewal $1,000 a year? It doesn't make sense for the area and seems incredibly excessive.
So I don't know about Hawaii. We do not have, what was the zone in Hawaii?
I think it was a vacation, resort?
It was a resort zone.
area.
Yeah.
So your residents that live in Sugarloaf will tell you they're not a resort zone, they're a residential area. And they don't, like, if you wanna rent out your house with minimal impact, but it's still a residential zone and it's classified as a residential zone.
No, I get that. I guess that's not really like the point. I guess the point of it is where, you would think it would be more in Hawaii, but it's $500 for the initial permit and then no renewal after that. So when I came into Big Bear, I was like, I'll offset our costs, our mortgage costs with like, we love Big Bear, we wanna spend time here, we love the community, but when we're not using it, rent it out. But I've had like 2 bookings for a whole year. It's low demand, and I knew that going in, but for some reason I think the county thinks that we're just like gangbustering like left and right and just bringing in like tons of like revenue. It's not the case. I'm not even like breaking even yet with like the $1,400 I paid on the permit. So I guess a lot of us kind of get together, host. Sorry, I'm like.
No,
I
take
think
your
it's
time.
the altitude because I'm coming down from like Santa Clarita. It seems excessive, and I get like, I'm really close to our neighbors, our next door neighbors. Like as soon as I bought that place, I was like, listen, this is like my plan. You have open access, direct communication. I don't want any issues with anyone that we bring in, like renting our cabin, to bother you guys. And honestly, the only issues that they have, the permanent residents, are the other residents. So, I mean, we're just trying to like understand, I think, as hosts in Sugarloaf, like we Tara, she's been doing this for how long?
Since 04.
04. So she's
wow.
like been my mentor on this because she was bringing me into the community fold, and we want to try to like do it right. Like you said, there's some people doing it right, some people aren't. I'm self-managing often out in Santa Clarita, but I'm actively managing. Like I'm like 100% cameras, everything. Like I'm on board with this. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of like put that in context with why I'm even like bringing this up.
And not to pick on you, but our ordinance has that you have to have someone respond.
We have that.
You do,
Yeah,
so you
100%,
self-manage, but
yeah.
you do have someone else that.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
we have someone that's gonna be available 24/7
Okay.
if there's anything that happens.
So when there is a call for service from a bad actor, not a good actor, but a bad actor, it takes so much of our time and resources at the county that it has become a burden on the taxpayer dollars to respond to that. And those residents that are impacted by that are, we get hundreds of calls of people that are saying, this is where I live, this is what happened, here's the video. And it's
Is that in certain spots, or are there certain like people, like certain homes that are kind of like
It's everywhere.
it's okay, because I guess I'm just trying to understand like who's, some people I can
and the
understand.
market's changed,
Yeah.
right? It has changed. So I think as you see that our code enforcement officers, and what I said, when we do another fee study to figure out, okay, it's not costing us as much because we have a better ordinance, that we have more compliant people, we have better people doing it, We have people that have learned from their mistakes, that are either out of the business or are thoughtful property managers, that the calls for service have dwindled. We don't have the county expense, we reduce the fees. So they do go up and down. So our fee studies are every 3 years unless they're, I mean, it wiped us out of the county with all the negative calls for service that we had.
Are there like, okay, that was another question. I served in the Marine Corps too, and I'm so sorry to hear about your husband, like, that's just, that gets to my heart. Cherry Point, North Carolina, they were always the same people that called in about the sound of the jets coming and going. Is that the same here? Because like,
No.
I just.
So we verify,
Okay.
much to the frustration of some residents. So here's an example. I had a lady in a different mountain area and she said, you want me to do what? You want me to go out and videotape the cars that are parked illegally so that you have proof to take to court? And I said, we can't do anything if I don't have the proof. So yes, I know it's snowing, I know it's 4 a.m. or 2 a.m. or whatever, but we have to have proof. So there has to be those documented cases, so that's how we can tell that it's not the complaining neighbor over and over and over. They're legitimate calls for service.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just on an informal basis, the amount of people we hear from are not like the same 10 people, it's new names every day.
Okay.
It's changing now.
Yeah, we
I
didn't
just wanna
hear
make
much.
sure that it's
Changing.
not like people who just
Yeah.
like are bored at home and just wanna like.
It's
pick
so
on a
quiet in
neighbor
Sugar
over and
House, like we
over again.
never hear that, that's
Yeah.
why.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
No,
changing.
Okay.
Alright, next question. Big Bear is unique, yet we are compared to the desert, Palm Springs, Arrowhead, and Lake Tahoe. 95% of jobs are tourist related. STRs, house visitors, is for our economy. Yet you have quadrupled license fees and doubled fines. We feel targeted as homeowners and misunderstood. We'd like to see remote county office and representation. In addition, we'd like remote streaming of your meetings so we can participate. Just like Joshua Tree. Also, how are the TOTs being utilized on the mountain? Finally, Big Bear is 80%, second homeowners, 20% residents. Yet your focus is on regulating the 80% and catering to the 20%. Hopefully a local office will help create a better understanding.
So we do not have the budgetary funds for a second office to broadcast our Board of Supervisors meetings. But what you can do is we televise them, so you can watch them anywhere. And your board comments, if you want them read at the meeting. So normally people, they come to Joshua Tree or they would come down into chambers in San Bernardino. They would receive 3 minutes, they would submit their comment to be read. I would be happy to read them on your behalf, or they can be sent to the entire Board of Supervisors for their review before the meeting. So that is an option that is available to all of you. And then the rest of that, I think we answered
Kind of touched
on
on, yeah.
TOT and,
The 80%, like 20% are actually locals. And they
Patrice,
work
how
here
many
to
of your Sugarloaf homeowners are resident versus off mountain?
The number that was quoted was wrong, it's mostly residents, mostly full-time residents, and it's like 50-50 now.
Okay.
Like, yeah, the demographic has changed dramatically.
This is
full-time
strictly
residents.
Sugarloaf?
Yeah, and Glenn might be able to answer that even more with the CSD numbers, but yeah, it's not 80-20, it's definitely more 60-40, 50-50
Okay.
with full-time residents.
We try to cater to everybody, so if he feels like there's an imbalance, please get with us after the meeting so that we can help give more attention to the area
Nothing's
of
still
cost
looking.
you have.
Don, would the supervisors be open to setting us up a remote, if we partnered with CSD or?
Potentially, sure.
So if we could work with them to have a remote location for Zoom and public comment?
Yep.
Okay.
What items in the ordinance are up for discussion to be changed? Our permit renewal lowered our occupancy from 10 to 6. We purchased our over 2,000 square foot home, per the prior ordinance that allowed one person per 200 square feet. This generally limits our, retirement income and limits the utility of the property. Big Bear Lake is considering the issue and turning to occupancy per square foot, which is much more fair. We have a hearing with SB County in October. Other owners have shared the same crucial problem.
So we are completely open to looking at how we do the formula for occupancy. When we do open the short-term vacation rental ordinance, it will be after December. So the company that is being hired to study
Chinese.
the saturation of it will come to us in December and tell us sort of what their thoughts are on appropriate sightings number per community and things like that. Once we receive that report, then I would imagine it would be springtime before we would look at opening the ordinance up and revisiting things like fees and occupancy, parking, things like that. So what we would do is we would look at the last 2 years of what's worked well, what hasn't worked, and then we would have public meetings to address the potential changes of what we might consider changing. So I would think that that would happen in 2024 after we got back to study. So stay tuned for that. And when we open it, we're gonna do everything, whether it's occupancy or parking or noise. We have incentives for noise monitors, reduce your fee, things like that. So we're open to any ideas. When we open it though, it'll be for everything.
Before I read the last one, does anyone have additional comment cards I can collect? Okay, my concern is the manner in which the STR permit fees were increased and they have now quadrupled. The justification was funds for code, yet code reported a decline in, kind of gone over this one, decline in issues. Question, can we have a more transparent accounting of exactly what the financial needs of code are with data to substantiate, so we might better establish the funds needed? And I know unlikely, but perhaps be able to reduce these very high fees.
Absolutely. So that goes hand in hand with the last question. When we open the ordinance, we would look at the fees that are charged. We would receive reports back from code enforcement. They are likely not the same as they were 2 years ago or a year ago. And so then they would make a recommendation of, we don't need these code enforcement people for short-term vacation rentals. And so then that would reduce the fees down that we look at. So when we adjusted that ordinance, the fees would be adjusted at that same time.
That was my question, I just wanna add one
Yeah.
bit. We just don't hear, I know you hear, you get lots of hundreds of calls.
Yeah.
I don't even know anyone, and I interface with so many hosts, not just Sugarloaf, but all over the valley, that has received a violation. So it just seems.
And just to clarify, she is the admin for our Airbnb host group that
Yeah,
interfaces
we're-
with Airbnb directly. And there's so many hosts on there, like that, property managers, hosts, owner, self-managers, and just wanted to clarify, like, so she has that
Thank you.
tie-in
This is my
to a
right
big
up here.
group of.
No, I appreciate it.
It's called a hype woman.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it. I didn't even plan this. But yes, I do interface. It is very true, and part of that is to network and be, share best practices.
Mhm.
Like, we want to run a tight ship. We love the good neighbor brochure. Never get rid of that. That is like, we can say, look, these are the rules.
Yeah.
Set expectations. So there's many things the county's done that really, with the strong ordinance, that we love. But the quadrupling of the fees was like, whoa. And we just don't hear that volume. I know you do.
It's
but we don't.
decreased. No, in all fairness, it's decreased, and probably the Lake Arrowhead community is the one that is still the
Yes,
most.
I kind of have heard a little bit.
Yeah.
But I don't want to point
Yeah.
fingers.
No, but for a variety of reasons, that still has probably the most angst of people going on over there.
Yes, I've heard, yes.
So,
Yeah.
we can absolutely look at reducing the fees, and if you have input for the Good Neighbor flyer brochure, we'd love
Awesome,
to. I know the complaints are still happening here because people are coming to our board of supervisors meetings still talking about it.
Yeah, I know. And I guess that's my question was would be nice to have the data.
Yeah.
So we would know. Oh, one more thing, that neighborhood notification when you get a permit. I just received one for a renewal that said, okay, this property a block away has renewed. Go to this website to find out occupancy standard, max, and cars. So I'm not sure why you get a letter to go to a website to get the data. It seems like that portion of the permit fee structure is, with technology, perhaps not needed, because most people are gonna throw that letter away.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah, no.
So back in the day, the letter went to, the noticing requirement was 300 feet of a property. If your neighbor was going to turn their property into a vacation rental, they had to pay for it. And we circulated it to any residents within 300 feet of that property, which may not seem like a lot, but in some areas it covers a lot. And on that piece of paper, it said, it's not whether you can weigh in on whether you want it or not, it's noticing you that it's coming. And on those original notices, it had the property management person's name and phone number and contact if you had a problem. So I get Mr. Smith who says, I found my paper buried in my kitchen drawer and I pulled it out and the property manager's no longer managing that property. So that was one of the complaints that we received, was that the data was old, people changed property management companies. So how do we have our neighbors know where to go?
Do you advocate they call the property manager or code?
Property manager first.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they're required to address it within 30 minutes, even if you have proof they didn't.
Because if you go through code, it takes longer to get to the property manager.
Okay.
Code enforcement calls property manager first.
I'm sorry, how long do they have to respond?
30 minutes.
To rectify the issue within 30 minutes.
It's 3 a.m. and the music's playing and there's a bunch of drunk people in the jacuzzi throwing bottles. How long did you want to give them?
I think that's awesome. I just haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
I think it'd be awesome though if you had like the actual property manager or the homeowner go to the homes that were directly impacted, kind of like the homeowners association when I have to do like paint my house or whatever, and have them actually sign it like, hey, I'm going to be managing the property, and then just like have them sign off on like, kind of like this is, I don't know, hand them a piece of paper, and then you have that like that kind of like one-on-one, I don't know, depending on like the quality of people that you're interacting
There's
with.
nothing that stops good hosts from doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, really.
We do.
I don't know that I want to advocate for the government to have more regulation, because really you're not going to want that. But good hosts could do that, and that could be part of best practices.
Right.
So I just meant to avoid that $400 fee.
To send out.
It's a lot, $400 just to sit out, and then I had to wait 30 days. I think that's like total 6 months I had to wait from start to finish to get my permit.
Legal thing.
And it wasn't that case with Hawaii whenever it was like within 30 days. So I guess I'm not, and the guy came out for 5 minutes and looked at my house, said, yep, you're good to go. I had to wait 6 months for this?
But I don't know why it took 6 months, but the neighbor that got the letter wouldn't know where to, so first of all, they may not know that the house that has the loud music or the 12 cars is a vacation rental if they don't get the letter.
That little website is great.
Yeah.
You could go there, you
So
can key in the address.
But if you don't know, how do you even know where to go, right? You just think you have a problem neighbor. So if you get the letter in the mail, the letter goes, uh-oh, I'm responding, so now I know.
I did think people do keep it, obviously people keep it, but
Yeah.
a lot of people probably don't, and then they don't know where to go.
You might not even know it's regulated by the county. I mean, I know you guys live and breathe this issue, but
Pretty much, well, that's true.
Well, and Dawn, code enforcement is not just for STRs.
No.
It's for anybody that's causing a problem. Your part-time owner, if somebody's having a party, it's not just an STR thing.
Right,
So
right,
that's one of the misconceptions too, is that my next door neighbor's a part-time guy and he's got his kids up and they're in the jacuzzi, who do I call? You call code enforcement, because that would be a direct code enforcement situation, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Now, if you call code enforcement, the first thing they're gonna do is look up the address and go, oh, it's an STR, so they
Right.
call it property management.
Right.
So I say you should call it property management, it just cuts out the middleman in
Yeah.
that
Right,
case.
if you know that's what
Yes.
those letters are helpful for, to know what
Right.
homes on your street are STRs.
And anytime code enforcement is answering the phone in the middle of the night, your fees are gonna continue, you just cut out the government.
Just brainstorm that.
Yes.
alright.
I promised the folks in the back of the room who have been here for 12 hours today that we would do our best to wrap up by 7 o'clock. So I will be happy to stick around in the foyer outside. If you have any additional questions that you think of, please hit me up.
And folks, please, please, please leave your email, sign up for their Facebook page, their Instagram
We have a
page.
newsletter that we push out.
Newsletter,
Yeah.
the stuff you see me post on Facebook and I send out for membership, it all comes because I make sure I'm connected and these guys are excellent at communication. So please,
Let us know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so please sign up and they won't spam you. They're sending you really relevant information. Thank you,
Thank you all.
Yeah, let's do that, because I think the calls that we're getting are Okay,
super
let's
down.
do it, because
But part of it's just the market change, right?
it is, and I think there's a more effective, I think, I would like all the neighbors to have the information they need in case, right? And I think it's just getting a little bit lost, and maybe there's a more efficient way to do it.
So part of what's happened though
Yeah,
is, this is my opinion. They got so bombarded that it created this visceral negative.
yes.
The minute somebody's car radio is up, that they hear it, they go, oh, it's a vacation.
I agree.